Good day. So a little update on the video I made about my family thinks I'm crazy. I've heard nothing back from anybody, and as I suspected, I started to think about what kind of stuff would come up in that conversation. And I started to think about the situations, and I remember the one time that I did see Jordan within the 6 months period, for example, and I had pointed out to him something that triggered him so much that we actually got into a little bit of a fight. And even though it was his pathology that caught, and he was the one that attacked me. And not only that, but my dad stood behind my brother, and instead of standing behind the obvious person that he should have because of the situation. I won't get into that situation. I'd rather see if he'd be willing to talk about that situation. So we were in a restaurant. I called him out on something he said that was pathological. He got really triggered about it and angry at me and attacked me. I grabbed him by the neck and I said, and I was thinking about hitting him. I didn't hit him. But I won't tell you about what the stuff was about. Maybe we can talk about that when it comes up. But my dad stood behind my brother, who's and I know why. I've been pointing out things through my actions, and I've been actually pointing out things that are causing them to be triggered. As you become a carrier of the light you carry around is going to cast light into all the shadows that are in your family's life. When you start to become better yourself, people are going to see what better is. And not only that, likely you're not going to have the patience to deal with these old pathologies that are in your family. And I'll tell you the main reason for that is because it's a pathology that was likely in yourself. So when I see these things happen with my family, those are the same kind of things that I dealt with. And I don't want those things back in my life. And I notice that those things trigger me. And it's because I didn't like who I was, and I don't like the ways that they act. And because of that, I pointed out. Because if we want to share an environment together, then we have to make some negotiations and be assertive and point out things that need to be pointed out, And if you decide to take the narrow path, and that means really holding yourself to a higher morality, holding yourself to each moment, trying to ask the question, what would Jesus do in this moment? To try to live the virtue of the Spirit all the time, you're going to trigger people. And because it is a kind of envy. People want to do the right thing. And when they see a person doing the right thing and also thriving doing the right thing, their egos aren't going to accept the fact that that's better, and instead they're going to act as if it's pathological. But it really is okay for us to know, the people that are walking the narrow path, for us to know we are going to get this reaction from the world. And we just have to go home and pray and meditate, and you'll find your center, you'll find that voice, and you'll just know that you are in the right. Doesn't matter how many of the masses seem to be against you. The masses live in a different world. And now that you're living in a higher consciousness, you're not going to be able to fit in these crowds. As Jesus said, if you walk the narrow path, they hate you because they hated me first, is what Jesus said. So you're not in these times of hedonism, Sodom, Gomorrah, and demoralized masses. The moral people are going to be the ones that are hated. And you should be happy, because if you are feared or hated by these dark forces, then you're doing the right thing. The only reason hate exists is because of their low vibration that they sit in. I believe that there is no such thing as hate. The only time I can feel hate is when I'm in that low vibration. When I'm up in this vibration, I just know that it's lack of love. It's a spectrum. Love is a spectrum. What God wants from us is for us to stand our ground, stand in our truth, speak our truth when we feel that need to do so. A lot of people can walk the narrow path but not help guide people to the narrow path. And that's definitely better than not walking the narrow path. However, to be a spiritual warrior, you need to walk the narrow path and not be afraid to guide people to it. And as you're trying to guide people to the narrow path, there's going to be haters. And that's people that are not willing to give up their old selves. And that's how connected they are to their persona and their ego, that they would rather attack you than recognize the pathology in themselves. I know there's ways to say things that make our truths more palatable. That is something that I'm working on. I want to be very good at, because I'm in a role now where I have to. I've taken an oath that I'm going to speak my truth always, so I have to find the best ways to do so. I do know that that's going to help me in this path, because there will be a lot of people that will not be able to say no to a truth if you put it in the right way. But those people are ready for the truth. The people that are not ready for the truth, doesn't matter how you say it, they're not going to react well to it. So, but I do believe that we grow receptors. So a lot of people who say, pearls upon swine, and yes, there is times when you have to know that a person does not have a receptor for it, and you probably shouldn't waste their time with it, because you're probably just wasting your own energy, and, However, I do believe that there is times where you can say something to somebody and they don't have the receptor for it yet. But then somebody they respect, or they read something from somebody they respect that backs up what you say, they grow the receptor and they realize that, and it sometimes takes that message to come from a few different places before people will believe it. So I encourage people, even if you don't think the person has the receptor for your transmission, because they're not ready yet, I still suggest most of the time you should try to say it. I read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and the first time I read it, there was a lot of that just went over my head. It's very esoteric, and as I had some experiences that showed me some esoteric knowledges. Once I experienced it with myself, then I was like, aha, that's what they were talking about in this book. That was me taking a message and holding on to it, but not receiving it yet, right? So then I went back and read the book again, and all of a sudden it was like way more understandable. And I still need to go back and read it again when I think that I've evolved even further, because these kind of books are not absorbed the first, second, third, probably even fourth time through, and that's why that's why people might need to hear these messages 3, 4, 5 times from different sources in different ways for them to finally receive it. So I suggest people be a part of that. When you carry that light, you've been given that light, and it's going to, as a light carrier, you are going to point out the darkness everywhere that you go, just through your actions, not even saying anything at all, just how you react to the world. You're voting, and people watch great people as they vote and as they live, and they try to emulate. Well, that's why we have to vote with our actions, vote with our dollars, vote with our words. That's where our power is. Unfortunately, the world is into idolatry. And we have to know that we're not going to be able to kill that away, but maybe we can be better examples than the idols that the Babylon has provided, because we know those idols are to lead people to pathologies. You will gain that confidence. God gives us the message. We just have to be listening. Much love.